You may have to live through laminate counters. Hi everyone, my name is Matt Difanis, broker, owner of RE/MAX Realty Associates with offices in Champaign, Mahomet, and Monticello, Illinois. And today I'm excited to bring to you the Champaign-Urbana metro area real estate market May tea leaf reading. Which means really I have some May market stats that I want to share. But seriously, they're really important. The month of May is useful to look at any year, but this year it's especially useful because this gives us a point far enough into peak season to get a real sense of what's going on. And of course, what makes this year so different than a normal year is the global pandemic and the amount of economic shutdown that was thrown right into the middle of our peak season. Now, I should clarify, a lot of folks think of peak season as being the summer months, and that's when a lot of the real estate closings will stack up. And remember, a lot of the reported data from the real estate market comes from closed sales. However, the closed sales post-date when buyers are in the market doing showings, signing contracts. So the very most current metric we can look at are pending sales as well as new listings. So with that, let's take a look at some historic context. I've compiled this data to show what March, April, and May have looked like for each of the last few years. So we have two clusters, one showing pending data, the number of buyers signing contracts during that portion of the year, and the other cluster on the right is new listings that went on the market during that same period. All of this data is for single-family residential for Champaign County only. And the green bar shows the average for 2016 through 2019. So if you look at that, on the pending side, you'll see that in 2020, we're down about 9%. We have 811. March, April, and May, down about 9% from the historic average of 888. On the supply side, however, we are down almost 29%. That is really dramatic. First of all, it's actually kind of a miracle that with something as disruptive as this global pandemic, our buyer transactions are only down by 9%. After all, think about how many people are not coming from overseas and are not getting on planes from the West Coast to come here for a house hunt, and yet we're still seeing 90+% of the normal number of transactions. That's kind of a miracle, all things considered. But when you look at that supply side being dramatically rolled back by 29%, we would expect to see some other metrics pointing to a very tight supply. And indeed, that's what the data shows. So we're now looking at InfoSparks, which is a graphing app that pulls data directly out of the multiple listing service. And we are looking right now at all price ranges for Champaign County only, a 5-year period. And we're looking at each month's actual data, not a rolling average, each month's actual data. And what we're looking at is the months of supply. And what you see here, looking at a 5-year history, is we are at a historic low at 2.7 months supply. Now, I should pause for a moment to point out that a 6-month supply is generally considered a balanced market, meaning if you have a 6-month supply, the market is neither tilted in favor of buyers nor sellers. When you have less than a 6-month supply, the market tends to favor sellers, and when you have more than a 6-month supply, the market tends to favor buyers. So we're sitting at a historic low for the last 5 years. Let me toggle this to 10 years. We're at a 10-year low. So this is really unprecedented in modern history. We are way into seller's market territory if you are looking at the entire market, all price ranges. Now, if you are a seller of a higher end property, or if you are about to be a seller of a higher end property, the story is going to be much different. You may, if you've been on the market, be feeling like, well, wait a minute, I keep hearing all these stories of lack of supply, lack of inventory, multiple offers, a total feeding frenzy, and yet my house is not seeing that. Well, look at this. You have a 9.2 month supply as of May of homes in Champaign County priced at $400,000 or more. So while we are well into seller's market territory, if you look at all price ranges, we're well into buyer's market territory if you're at $400,000 and above. Now, don't be too discouraged, because you'll note that our inventory is dropping relatively quickly, even in that higher end price range, whereas in a normal year, normally it's doing exactly the opposite. It's going up in May and then starting to come down later in the year. So we're already seeing a drop in that inventory, so that's fairly encouraging. The other thing to keep in mind about the high-end price range, In addition to the fact that there is just a smaller number of buyers that are able to play in that high end of the price distribution, you also have the added complication of the fact that the supply is expandable. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're looking at houses that are $150,000 or $200,000, you can't build a new house for that price range. And so the supply is inherently fixed and the demand is perennially very, very strong for affordable properties. By contrast, when you get north of $400,000, if a buyer doesn't totally love what they're seeing in that price range, they can go build a brand new house, thereby expanding the housing supply to get something that suits them. So that means that there's a certain percentage of buyers that will in fact buy in that 400 plus price range that aren't buying anything that's on the market right now. They're going out and expanding the supply. So what does this mean depending on whether you're a buyer or a seller in the market today? Well, it means that we're seeing a shockingly normal amount of activity that has happened year to date, but still a pronounced reduction. We're seeing a huge reduction year to date of listings, and I don't think it's because we're going to see 29% fewer people that have houses to sell. That leads me to believe that we're probably going to see more late season inventory hitting the market than we normally would. So if you are a buyer in our marketplace this year and you haven't yet purchased and you have the luxury of waiting at least a few more weeks to watch the market, you're going to have a couple of things happen. I expect that you will see some additional inventory that hits the market late in the season, and I can confirm, because you saw the numbers to prove it, you have a lot of buyers that have already made their purchase decisions that are no longer in the market. That means you're not competing against that stampede of other buyers. So if you're a buyer and you're able to watch over the next few weeks, you should find that things are a little less fast and furious, which will make the house hunt and the decision making a little less high pressure, high stress. If you are a seller, you'll notice that even in the high end, we have a very tight supply. Moving into off-season, we always see a reduction in demand in those off-season months, but that is not a problem for a seller as long as we don't have excess inventory. And you're seeing that we clearly don't have an excess inventory in general across the market, inclusive of all price ranges. But even in the high end, inventory has been coming down in the last 2 or 3 months. And so even as we head into the off season, the position of a higher end seller is not all that bad because inventory is not building, it's been dropping. So if you're a buyer, I would suggest to you that one of the real value opportunities in the current market is to focus on homes that are in the 15 to 30, maybe 35-year-old range. What you're seeing in that segment are a lot of high-quality homes in terms of large amounts of square footage, really good quality locations and neighborhoods, but because the housing stock that's in that age range tends to be somewhat dated, either because it's got an older furnace, air conditioner, or roof, or maybe all of those things have been replaced, but it's got a dated kitchen. You may have to live through laminate counters. But if you're willing to tackle something like that or simply live with it for a while, you may find that there's an exceptional value. In a metro area like this, the newer the housing, the newer the subdivision, the farther on to the edge of town that it is. So if you're looking at homes that are 15 to 35 years old, in many cases, you're finding that those are somewhat more centrally located, more established neighborhoods, more mature trees, really desirable in a lot of different ways, and you're finding that prices there have come down a fair bit. I've had numerous listings in that segment that have seen price reductions and offer exceptional values, and in many cases, they offer building quality that you just don't find on new houses. Things like solid wood doors, trim, Anderson or Pella windows that you're much less likely to find until you're well north of $400,000. One last group of people who should be paying particular attention to these stats, but who may not be, are people who are not in the market as buyers or sellers, but who really should be both. If you're already a homeowner here and your employment is stable and you plan to be here for at least the next few years, this may be an exceptional opportunity to sell the house that you're in and look at making a local elective upgrade move. You've just seen the stats that show that anything in affordable price ranges is seeing an undersupply and a strong demand, and yet it is still a buyer's market in higher end price ranges. You couple that with mortgage rates that are still hovering near all-time all-time lows, and it makes this a really extraordinary time to do an elective local upgrade move. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me individually. I welcome your comments, your criticisms, your feedback. Keep it polite and civil. And as always, thank you so much for watching.